Trickery Domain Cleric isn't my personal favourite, let's get that out of the way, but it is a very, very useful subclass in D&D. So let's jump into it. This is my Trickery Domain Cleric, levels 1 to 12, with a combat tutorial and a bunch of items for you to use. So let's jump right in. And of course, level 1, we start with the Cleric. Now for your cantrips, we are going to take Resistance, we're going to take Guidance, and we're going to take Sacred Flame. I think when it comes to Clerics, these are your 3 most useful. Produce Flame is also up there, but I would stick with these, primarily Guidance, because I think this is one of the better spells in Baldur's Gate 3. And of course, for our domain, the Trickery Domain. You wield unorthodox divine tools of deceit and illusion in worship of your chosen deity. This gives us Blessing of the Trickster, so advantage on stealth checks, Charm Person, and Disguise Self. Now pick any deity you want, which takes Saloon. And then for your ability points, I would have 8 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 17 Constitution, 10 Intelligence, 16 Wisdom, and 8 Charisma. For your proficiencies, take whatever you like. And that brings us very nicely to Cleric level 2. A Channel Divinity charge, as well as Turn Undead, so pray to turn all undead that you can see. And Invoke Duplicity. Distract your enemies with an illusion. Within 3 meters of the illusion, attack rolls have advantage for you and your allies. Both the attacker and creature must be within 3 meters of the illusion. I really like this spell, I think it's great. It's a really nice way, especially early levels, of just really hamping out your teammates and not only causing distractions but also buffing their chance of dealing more damage. And for your level 1 spells, I would take Guiding Bolt because this is a really good first level damage dealer, and if it lands, the next hit on that target will be with advantage. Cure Wounds, melee based healing ability. Healing Word, so a bonus action ranged healing ability. Inflict Wounds, one of my favourite necrotic and level 1 spells in general, and upscales really, really well. And Create or Destroy Water, pair this with some sort of lightning, whether it be with a arrow or a spell. Really good way of just bulking up your lightning or thunder damage. Okay, Trickery Cleric number 3, or level 3 I should say. We have a bunch more stuff, but more importantly, we now get Mirror Image. Create 3 illusionary duplicates of yourself that distract attackers. Each duplicate increases your armor class by 3, and anyone that knows me knows I love Mirror Image. I think it's such a good spell. We also have Pass Without Trace, again, helps with your stealth, so call forth a veil of shadows and silence that gives you and all nearby companions a plus 10 bonus to stealth checks. In my opinion, this works better in tabletop D&D as opposed to Baldur's Gate. Trickery Domain Clerics aren't really combat orientated in my opinion, they're more RP-esque, and this just ties into that a bit more. We're going to try and make this more of a Battlefield Controller-esque cleric, so bear that in mind. So, yeah, if you're looking to do a huge amount of damage with the Trickery Domain, you're probably better off picking a way different subclass. For a spell at level 2, we're going to take Hold Person. Hold a humanoid enemy still, can't move, act, or react, and any attacks on them that are melee based will be guaranteed critical hits while they are held. It is concentration, so you need to buff up your Constitution, or your Concentration saving throws, which is also through your Constitution. And now that brings us very nicely to Cleric level 4 and our first feat. Now before that, we get to pick a cantrip, and we're going to start with Produce Flame. And we are going to come down here to Resilient Constitution. Now, this will allow us to put our Constitution to 18, giving us a plus 4 overall. It will also help us maintain concentration, because we now have proficiency in Constitution saving throws, which means we'll roll with advantage, so we roll twice, take the highest amount. And why I'm taking this very early on, instead of buffing our wisdom, is because I feel like it's going to be more important for us, especially early levels, to maintain our concentration and stuff than to land stuff. Especially when you think in the early stage of the game you have people like Will and Gale who can also fill those roles. I think having someone that can just land something and hold it for the whole battle, way more useful. And for a spell we're going to take Spiritual Weapon. Nice little bonus action summon, just get a floating sword or axe, whatever, just follow you around and attack enemies. It's really good. Okay, Cleric level 5, we now have access to Destroy Undead. So now when we turn Undead, they also take 4 to 24 radiant damage. We also now have access to Bestow Curse and Fear, and both of these are going to be always prepared, so we don't have to choose them as spell options. And for me, any cleric is not complete without Spirit Guardians. Really good spell. A nice way of just throwing it up, maintaining concentration, and then enemies that run at you will take damage. You can run at enemies, they'll take damage. And what makes it even better, you can choose between radiant or necrotic damage. So if you're up against enemies that are immune to radiant damage, get a necrosis, and vice versa. Okay, Cleric level 6, one more Channel Divinity charge, as well as Channel Divinity Cloak of Shadows. Wrap yourself in shadows to become invisible, if you are obscured. So, again, really nice way of stealthing your stuff up, but again, not the most combat orientated. And for a spell, we're going to take Mass Healing Word, just so we can ensure we are healing our allies still. Okay, Cleric level 7, we now have access to our level 4 spell slots, and we have access to Dimension Door. Really nice way, it's almost like Misty Step, but you can take someone else with you. And it's just really good. It's really nice if you need to get someone up the battlefield or away from danger, something like that. We also have Polymorph, and this comes in very helpful during some fights as well. For our spell next, we're going to take Glyph of Warding. I love this big old AoE nuke. Now, a lot of people place it on the ground, wait for enemies to walk into it. I think that's the long-winded way. Basically, on your turn, you place it on a bunch of enemies, especially round 1. It will trigger at the end of your turn because there's enemies within it. Big old AoE nuke. You can pick the damage type. I think it's a way more versatile option than things like Fireball and whatnot. Just amazing. Okay, Cleric level 8, Divine Strike Poison. Really nice of just adding poison damage to your weapon strikes. And if you aren't too focused on putting up your dex or your strength, this is a nice way of just buffing that damage up. We also have access to another feat, and of course for this we're going to take our Wisdom all the way to 18. And we're going to get the Guardian of Faith as our spell casting, as our spell for this level. Basically call forth a Guardian that will sit on the battlefield. It will attack enemies within its radius, but if it deals damage, and I believe it's set at 20 it deals, it receives the same amount of damage afterwards. So it will lose health really quickly, but it is a nice way of just bulk dealing damage to enemies. And that's how I like to play my Trickery Domain Cleric in these video games, because the RP aspect is a little less, especially during combat. Having these summons, having these distractions, these things that can sort of almost pull aggro in a system where aggro isn't really a thing, I think is the best way to play the Trickery Domain Cleric to get the most versatility out of it. Now at Cleric level 9 we do have access to our level 5 spell slots. We also have access to Seeming, and this can be pretty good. I actually used this myself in Act 3. We also have Dominate Person, again can be helpful, it kind of depends on what your playstyle is. And for some spells we're going to take Insect Plague, because this makes the terrain difficult, and disadvantage on perception checks. It's also concentration and deals 4 to 40 damage. And we're also going to take Mass Cure Wounds just to keep buffing up our healing abilities. Okay, Cleric level 10 we have Divine Intervention. Again, loads of options you can use for this. I think there's 6 or so, but once you use it, it is gone for your entire playthrough. This is a one and done type thing. It does not refresh on a long rest or a short rest or anything like that. You cannot restore it with items. It is a one and done type situation. So for a cantrip, let's take Light. And for a spell, we're going to take Flame Strike. Now, Flame Strike I think is amazing, because not only does it do radiant damage, it also does fire damage. So the damage is split. So even if you have an enemy that's sort of resistant to fire, you'll still get the radiant pop-off, and vice versa. Okay, Cleric level 11, we have access to our 6th level spell slots. And you already know what we're going to go with if you've seen any of my build guys playing that ally. Again, playing into a Tricky Domain, what better way than to summon a demon or a Dinjin or a Deva. Just phenomenal. And finally, Trickery Cleric level 12, a new feat available. ASI, Wisdom up to 20, and we're not going to take another level 6 spell slot. There is no point, because you can have access to 1, and we're not going to be relying on items that restore our spell slots. So, in my opinion, your best point of call is to come into the lower levels and pick more things. Something like Blindness or Silence, maybe a Prayer of Healing, an Animate Dead, a Speak with Dead, Revivify. Something along the lines of that. I'm going to take Enhance Ability, because why not? Really, pick whatever you think you are going to get the most use out of in this late stage of the game. Okay, so when it comes to equipment, I actually prefer a bit of a off-the-cuff, a bit more of a out-there type setup for my Trickery Domain Clerics. So we're going to start with Savrok's Horned Helmet. Now, we're only proficient with up to medium armor, so bear that in mind. So, we're going to take the Deathbringer's Sight, so gain Dark Vision, number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. We also get Dauntless, so we can't be frightened and can't be afflicted with other emotion altering conditions, and Constitution saving throws +1. The Cloak of the Weave, so again +1 bonus to spell save DC, and we can also absorb elemental damage once per short rest and take half as much on our next attack from it, and deal an additional 1d6 of that element on our next attack. The Blackguard Greaves basically gives us a +1 to our athletics. The Armour of Agility, add your full dexterity modifier, which in this case is +2 to our armour class. We do not get disadvantage on stealth checks, and a saving throw +2. The Legacy of Masters, again +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with weapons, just to buff our damage up a little bit. The Burnished Ring gets Paralysing Ray, which I think works amazingly with a Trickery Domain Cleric. The Shifting Corpus Ring, Invisibility and Blur, again great things for a Trickery Domain Cleric. Bloodthirst, improved critical, so reduces our critical hit to 18 now because of the helmet as well. And creatures hit with this weapon receive vulnerability, which I think also thematically fits a Trickery Domain. And then we get the Shield of the Undevoured. So, throws a disadvantage on saving throws to resist your spells or actions that inflict fear, and fear is now one of the innate abilities that the Trickery Domain Cleric gets. We also get an additional level 1 spell slot. And I think overall that is the best sort of setup for a Trickery Domain Cleric. A lot of people tell you to use certain items or staffs. I think this setup works the best, and it leaves a lot of your good items, like your Helldusk armor and stuff, available to use on your other frontline characters. So let's get this going. We'll go find some combat and test it out. Okay, as soon as you leave camp, there are a few things to set up. The first thing is we are going to summon our planar ally. This will use our 1 level 6 spell slot, but that's okay. And for a Trickery Domain, I actually think a Dingini works amazingly. And looks awesome. What says trickery than a floating spectral genie? So, now that is done, I think that is the only thing we set up pre-fight. It looks like it, just trying to remember. Yeah, everything else will come in afterwards. So, we can go find some combat and test this all out. Okay, we are in the combat as you can see, and it is now, we're starting with our Dingini. So let's move them up. And you'll see how much base damage they can do. Oh, you can't because they won't reach, of course not. Okay, well that's fine because they have lots of stuff like this. So, we can Whirlwind and Restrain, Drunken Inhale, which does toxic damage, and Thunderwave. So we've also got Shifting Winds it turns out. So, let's start with Shifting Winds. This is basically Misty Step. So let's go here. And then we can do our little sweep. And there you go. Unfortunately, they both saved the Whirlwind, but that is just an option you have here. Now they're kind of stuck here, and we're pulling aggro. You see, the Dingini is a great way of just pulling aggro. And now we're going to start with just going to do a basic attack with our Cleric, just so you can see how much damage. And you can see there, we actually did a critical because of our number being reduced, which was only 11 damage, but we compare that with Divine Strike, Poison, for another 8 damage. So 19 overall, which again isn't lots, but for a Trickery Domain, which isn't really focused on melee damage at all, getting those crits I think is what will help you out. We also have a bonus action, so we could do something such as cast our Spiritual Weapon and get another summon on the board. Cast it here. And there you go. Now we've pulled aggro here with as many people as possible, and the rest of our allies could just wail on them if they wanted to. You see 2 big misses because of how good our AC is, and then our Spiritual Weapon could come in here and do probably around 10 damage. 9 damage, there you go. See, I've played Cleric way too much. Okay, so let's see a base attack for our Dingini, see how well it does. There you go, a nice little 13 damage. So again, not a lot, but for an extra shield on the battlefield, 13 damage isn't anything to be scoffed at. Again, another 10 damage. Okay, now we again can do our actual Trickery Domain things now. And the first one is we can invoke our Duplicity. So, we're going to start with doing that, just here. So let's get our Duplicity, we will cast it here. And there you go, that has targeted everyone here. And what we can do is if we can maintain concentration throughout this round, we can then buff our concentration with things like Mirror Image. Now that was of course our bonus action, also our main action. So what we could do with a bonus action is if we wanted to and needed to as a healer, come in here and do like a 2nd level healing word on our fighter, just to buff them up. So we can play that healing, distracting, controlling role still. Now you see we managed to maintain concentration, even though we got hit. And again, big misses thanks to our amazing concentration save and throw. Okay, it is now our fighter's turn, and thanks to our duplicity, you see we have advantage on the enemies. So, let's start swinging. And there you go, huge hits. Now we're going to end our turn, because I don't want to kill them off too early. And again, it's up to our Dingini. So, let's come here. And let's see if we can show off our Drunken Inhale. We can do it here, so... There you go. All drunk. Killed him. Dingini is just amazing. It's such a good pairing to the Trickery Domain Cleric. They work so well in conjunction with each other. Okay, now like I said, unfortunately we did lose concentration, but if we still had it, we could buff ourselves up with a mirror image. What we're going to do is cast Spirit Guardians. And I'm going to upcast this to level 5 to show you how much damage it does. 23 damage just for being there. And like I said, you can move it and it will start targeting other people as well. So we just did 9 to them. Unfortunately they saved, but we'll leave them in here and they'll keep taking that damage. And then big miss. It all just helps us maintain our concentration. Okay, and as you can see we're still hit. So again we're going to show off some more abilities, and this time let's do Flame Strike. Now we are facing a rogue, so it's going to be a bit more difficult and we're going to hit ourselves sadly. But there you go, you can see the mass destruction we did. Absolutely murdered them. And thanks to Spirit Guardian still being available, I'm going to start closing the distance on this one here to get some free damage from these. And again, bonus action, and we can Misty Step. We'll come up here. We just need to get some space, so there we go. Right, Spirit Guardians, let's do some damage. There we go, only 9, so not amazing. But that does help, and then we come in here. And I mentioned that Inflict Wounds is such a great spell, and it buffs up. This is at 4th level. 32 damage. And they broke concentration on their spell. Again, big misses. All it does is help us maintain concentration. And that's actually really good for us, because it means we can now run back into him, and Spirit Guardians will re-damage him again. Just like this. And there you go. Now, unfortunately, I do keep saving, because rogues are amazing. But, another little stab, just like that. Get your poison, and you're almost chipping away at them. And that is my Trickery Domain Cleric. Now again, it's not the easiest class to play as, or subclass I should say. Not the most battle focused, it's more of a support type. Works way better in my opinion on tabletop. But this is a way you can make it useful, maintain your spells, and maintain your items for all your other characters, but still play a key part of the battle. And we didn't even use things like Whole Person. So if you've enjoyed, please drop this a like, helps me amazingly. And let me know in the comments below if there's anything you'd do differently, other items, other setups, or who your party composition would be if you're using this class. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, helps me amazingly, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys.